my name is Sophie Allen, and the reason I'm here is that I run a publication called Chart Collective. We publish works that explore the ways that our stories are woven into environment and place. I don't have a history in art, but nonetheless I'm here to talk to these lovely artists tonight, and I wanted to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're on, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and acknowledge their elders past, present and future. And now I would like to introduce the artists, and I'm going to read what they have written about themselves because I think that it says it just so perfectly. Okay, so Debbie Symons' work is politically charged, discussing the moral and ethical consequences of ecological decisions. Jasmine's seemingly beautiful and intricately crafted works chart landmarks of anthropocentric disaster that cannot be found on any atlas or world map. These dark wonders of the natural world offer an insight into a super ecology in which the natural and artificial have become inextricably linked within one natural system, an ecosystem of universal proportions from which no part is immune from the changes of its counterparts. And I think that that's a really wonderful thing to read to start off this conversation. Some pretty big ideas there. But I think that we should just start this conversation, which we want you all to know is really informal, and if you would like to at any point interject with a question or a personal experience or an idea that has to do with what we're talking about, even an artwork that you might have seen at the Art Plus Climate Equals Change Festival that this is a part of, please don't be shy at all, just interrupt. And yeah, I think that that's how we'll conduct a conversation. So why don't you guys talk to us a little bit about the works, Making Water Visible and the Water Harvest. Take it away.
Cool.
I'm standing in front of it.
Okay, the first work that we developed was making...
Should we say why we're here? Because of the residency?
Oh, go for it.
Yeah. Sorry. So we're here because we received a fantastic grant from the City of Melbourne and Creative Spaces to be doing this amazing new artist in residence here at LAB-14. And this particular artist in residency space, so this exhibition space is actually where we've been conducting our artist in residence. And we've been running it kind of like a laboratory / exhibition / studio space throughout the festival and in the lead up to it, and so the reason why the studio was developed is because here in particular was to put artists amongst leading scientists, researchers and academics to help inform their practice and the artworks that are emerging. And so this particular residency is based around the City of Melbourne's ability to adapt to climate change and issues of sustainability and resilience. And this particular artist in residency, as you can tell, is on water, and specifically around the issues surrounding reduced rainfall and drought. And that's why we're here in the Catchments Project. This is our response to it. So can you take it over the first artwork?
Okay, cool. The first artwork we did is the water...
Making Water Visible.
And this is the first time that Melbourne's water has ever been mapped in this way with all the different layers of content. So the first layer is these larger spaces that you can see here, which the pink, and I think from where you're probably sitting it's orange, I imagine, purpley sort of colour here, and these are groundwater. So this is the water that's sitting underneath our feet that's in Melbourne. We go from Lakes Entrance to Shepparton all the way to Warrnambool, and then the next layer on top of that is these little spaces here that you can see, and that's a hot springs. So we've got some down here in the Mornington Peninsula and then quite a few on the west. And then the blue are obviously rivers and lakes that surround in Melbourne and Victoria. And then we have our catchments, our dams that provide Melbourne with our drinking water and water in our kitchens and stuff like that.
And so the idea behind this work was we wanted to give Melbourne's water system a sense of visual presence and identity in the same way that a road map or a map of Australia, it's very obvious to see where the bite of Victoria is, but we wanted to explore that further in terms of making a natural resource that's not necessarily as visible front and centre. And so we wanted to kind of show that that our water system is this living organism that contributes to the health and resilience of our ecosystem, and also communicate all of the different types of water systems for the first time. And it was really interesting when we were making this work, we were researching and we found that America has actually used the vast majority of its groundwater. It's all gone. So they're in a bit of a pickle, and so it's fantastic to know that in Victoria we still have our groundwater resources. Yeah, and so
the work was made by sourcing all the different layers and drawing them, hand drawing. So we got the data, and then we hand drew that data, and then that data was then fed to into a computer program, and then that was then sent off to the laser cutters that cut the material. The material is a type of perspex which obviously has a reflective colour, and that's why when you move around the room it goes from purple to pink and yellow and all, and it has that, so it gives that essence of water. It has that reflective quality and also makes it look like it's a living sort of map.
Yes, that responds to your movements as you move around the room. And because our water system is something that is constantly in flux and changing, and we are living at a time when our weather and environment is shifting from extremes. We're going from drought, no water, to flood, the excess of water. So we were hoping to be able to instill that in the map.
Yeah.
Now, did you say that the material that you use had a relationship to the space helmets?
Yes.
And could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So in my practice, I normally work with glass, and NASA spacesuit helmet glass specifically. I was interested in the idea that the NASA spacesuit helmet glass kind of acts in the same way as the ozone layer does for astronauts in space, because they don't have the ozone layer protecting them. And so I've always found that material particularly fascinating, and the idea that the NASA spacesuit helmet, it has this iconography of being an all-seeing eye and reflecting back the Earth from a different perspective, and just its innate qualities of having the relationship with the space race and the life support system of an astronaut and the life support system of its natural counterpart, which is the ozone hole. And so this particular material is, again, the next version of that, which is perspex as opposed to the coating on glass, but it's the same coating. Yeah.
Okay, and obviously in this section you have quite a beautiful mirrored effect of the water harvest.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd like to talk about the water harvest and how that relates to this work.
Yeah, we're really proud of this work because we ended up getting 500 people to contribute to it. And so this work, we contacted people through the City of Melbourne's database and through our own social networks and schools and businesses throughout, scientists, just massive networks to get the word out, because what we wanted was people to contribute their water that they've saved into their home or businesses. So the water that you see on the table and all around the space is water that people are either collecting in their water tanks at home, or people that have got like a bucket under the sink, and when they're waiting for the hot water to come through and they're collecting that water and they're using it out on their veggie gardens, or people that make coffee and keep their coffee water and pour it out in the garden, sort of stuff. So everyone that's doing a step to save water in their home or business environment. And so what we did was we put a call out and asked people to contribute a 300ml sample or a 1 litre sample for businesses, and they had to bring it in, or we went and collected it. And so every single bottle we had, we put it into an Excel spreadsheet. We put their name, their details, and their address, so therefore we could get their name and their coordinates of where the water was collected on the bottles, and we had that sandblasted on. And then every single bottle we had, we put it all on the bench there. We got all of these bottles engraved, and then we poured their particular water into their bottle. And so at the end of the exhibition, we're going to be emailing all of these people back to come back and get their bottle, and then they have a marker to celebrate what they're doing, because all the little steps, all the little bits help save our resources.
And we have to say we've been quite overwhelmed by the response. It's actually been really fantastic. We went from 25 people 1 week to 250 the next, and as you can see from all the bottles that line the entire studio space, we weren't quite expecting 500, and it's just been absolutely fantastic to see. The first person would generally come in, make contact with the project, have a chat with us, and then the next week their entire family would come back. and then now coming back to see the exhibition, having people just say off the cuff to us, by the way, I am now using all my water in my home so much more consciously, and it's changed my whole relationship to the way I respond to water as a resource. So it's just been fantastic, and also children have just been so incredibly beautiful, and they just understand the project and run with it. So
you told me a story the other day about one girl in particular.
Yes, so this little girl, I met her at one of the private schools I went to. She came up to me with her bucket and she said, I want you to know that I collected my water in this bucket, I put it out in the rain, and then she pulled from behind her water bottle and she held it close to her and she said, now you will take care of this, won't you? And I found out later that she'd actually slept with it in her bed overnight and she hadn't let it out of her sight. And I thought, if anything, we have done this project for that little girl, because that response is just so touching and fantastic. So
isn't that fascinating once the concept of art is brought into a resource that this little girl has, you know, used every day of her life? It's given it such a different preciousness and meaning.
Yeah.
I think that also I wanted to sort of talk about the amazing colours and what's actually going on in some of these bottles. So I've had a really good look around myself in the daytime when I came, and the patterns, the colours, the shades.
They're beautiful, aren't they?
Yeah.
It depends on where the water came from. So people, generally, if you see like a green tinge to the water, it will be a water tank water. Because there's no filtration. It's coming off a roof, it's going into a tank, it's got no chemicals, nothing in it, so it has like an algae sort of thing growing in it. We've got Thomas, Jasmine's partner, had to get the water for Tarawara Museum, and that was in a dam, and so that water's come off a roof and they pipe it into a dam that they have on their property, and they have all the natural native wildlife living there, and that's how they use their water. So there's got little living creatures in that one.
Oh, and we've got people's dishwater, people's coffee water. We actually had a really interesting response from somebody else that's part of the festival, and you can see behind you there's a blue bottle filled with water, and that particular one is actually because it's water from an artwork that's a part of the Slow Melt project. And so a part of their installation is that they have ice that is dripping every single day, and it's replenished every day, and they collect that water and put it on the gallery's garden, and they actually brought in some of that water for the project so that it's not wasted. So it was a really beautiful interdisciplinary cross-pollination in the festival between two artists responding.
And so we have artwork 1, artwork 2, and as a part of this residency you'll also be making artwork 3, Getting Busy, which is just on the little podium behind everyone. Would you like to talk about that one?
Getting Busy is a blueprint that we're drawing up for the City of Melbourne, and that oyster shell, Jazzy went and learnt how to do 3D printing.
Which is really fantastic. I got to work with the engineers here and some of the scientists. So hold on, first you've got to tell the story of how we got the oyster.
We got the oyster.
How you called the man as he was going out to the rock.
Yeah, as he was going out. So we wanted to create a work that used a native species and reintroduced it back into the local environment. So that is the Angarsi oyster, which is Australia's native oyster. That species is getting farmed out in the bay, down Queenscliff and stuff. And so the work is to create 3 oyster cages in docklands and create a structure on the top of them with a beautiful big disco ball and some party lights that will be on the structure. And it's a way of engaging people in what happens to their water when they don't pick up their dog poo and they don't pick up their rubbish and it flows down the river, and how it affects the chemicals in the water. And so it's a proposal to develop an app that people can download on their Android or Apple phone, and they can pledge a domestic action like I will always pick up my dog poo or I will not litter, that sort of thing. And when they pledge a domestic action, Barry White, the love god, plays to the oysters for them to get busy cleaning the water, because they absorb chemicals and pollutants and they put them in their shell. And so the music is played to them to stimulate them to get busy cleaning the water. So we had to get the shells so Jazzy could do the 3D printing. So I've rung up the farmer, because there's 3 different farmers in the bay, I rang up the farmer and he's on his boat, and I've gone, look, you know, we can't get a shell anywhere. There was none for sale. It wasn't in season because, you know, usually we have the Pacific oyster, which is an introduced species, and he was going out in his boat, so he grabbed me like 3 or 4, and then one Sunday I drove down there, beautiful day, down into Mornington to pick up the shells. Just grabbed the shells.
It was hilarious the day that Dee came into the studio, and she said at 6 a.m. I was on the phone to the farmer. Yeah, you know, I've got to go, love. I've got to go. Yeah, I'll get you one oyster. I'll get you one off the rock. Okay, I'm getting in the boat now. Okay, see ya. Because
we've rung like Footscray Market, Vic Market, all these farmers and suppliers. Well, because what are these crazy people want these things? But he was out on his boat and he was going to go and collect mussels, and he grabbed me some shells at the same time, which was lovely. And then Jazzy took them and got them done.
Yeah, so I worked with an engineer, and he taught me how to do 3D printing, which was absolutely phenomenal. Actually, first we went and got it scanned with these incredible scanners that the University of Melbourne has, and then we took it and enlarged it, so it's quite significantly larger than what the original is, and had it printed. And then I never realised 3D printing is more akin to as opposed to a printer, it's more like a sewing machine in the way that it works. It's phenomenal. And so then we took that piece, which was cast in plastic, and then had it cast in bronze. And the lovely thing about that particular work is that it will slowly, slowly oxidise over time, and also give that sense of soaking up what's in the atmosphere or what's in the water to slowly change the colour of the shell.
And so that process, I mean, you know, ostensibly you could have just cast the oyster as it was. Why did you go for that 3D printing idea? Is that sort of in the spirit of this lab residency of working with technologies?
I think that's a part of my practice. It really is how science specifically. So I wouldn't have known that it was important or significant to be working with that particular native species unless I had the science and the people telling me that the water needed to be cleaned in the first place. So I think within particularly I think in both of our practices, there is that sense of filtering nature through scientific devices to make the invisible visible, to make the issues visible, to make unseen aspects of our nature and environment visible. And then, so there is kind of that hand of it goes from nature through science, through the artist's hand, and then whether it goes through a computer or a telescope. So it's kind of a techno, kind of romantic response, I guess, to nature and the environment.
And looking at positive and constructive ways that humans alter the world, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'm quite fascinated with the term super ecology that you talked about. Yeah. Did you want to sort of discuss that, Tony?
Sure. So I've often been influenced by Olaf Eliasson, and he, in one of the essays about him as a writer, the name is escaping me right now, but it will come back to me. And he talks about the idea of super ecology, in which the natural and artificial have now become inextricably bound within one natural system, and it doesn't really matter. They're no longer opposing forces; they're one force now. And I think that's kind of interesting in terms of atmosphere, because I never realised before doing this research that hello, come have a seat. Do join us. I never realised that in our atmosphere, yes, we're pumping things out into the atmosphere, but what happens is that one negative thing meets another negative thing in the atmosphere, and they cause a really, really bad thing that we've got no idea of what that might be or what impact that might have on our environment. So the idea of super ecology, I suppose, is just that the natural and artificial are now inextricably bound to one another, and what will happen to one, the fate of one is now bound to the other, and that we need to get them to work together. And so I think the idea between both of the works, and particularly this is mapping the natural, this is mapping the man-made, and they're both mapping the catchments and the water, but that idea of the reflection between the two, it is really how the two can start to work together within one natural system. And then it's people that will hopefully be able to engineer a way to do that.
And I just have to ask before we move on from the getting busy piece, whether it's scientifically proven that Barry White does stimulate.
No.
Okay. No. But you're working with science, so I'm thinking
No, there's no scientific proof to it.
You don't believe that.
But all organic beings love being played music.
Yeah.
and light, and we're all, you know, sensitive, photosensitive, sound sensitive. We all grow from positive engagement and encouragement, so that's where we're going.
And how many babies were born in the 70s because of him? So,
and because of oysters, of people eating oysters.
Right, so that's all part of it too. It's nice, it's very celebratory. Okay, so maybe you guys can talk to us a little bit about the way that you have come to this point in your practice of engaging so heavily with science and issues of environment.
Me.
One of you.
One of us. It's okay,
Please.
please.
You go, girl. I'll think about it.
I find scientific material and data fascinating. I find the understanding in the general populace of scientific data and material fascinating as well. I find the confusion that some people have with reading those statistics and working out what those statistics mean is an area that I can play in quite happily. If I don't understand, I go and ask a scientist that's written the report or send an email and try and understand it. But I find scientific material has got such a low presence in commercial media, and it affects all of our futures, and I find that really fascinating how I suppose I've really started using data when the global financial crisis was happening, and everyone was looking at stock market boards and the global financial crisis and stuff. And at a very similar time, the red list of threatened species came out and said that 1,000 species had increased on the red list in 1 year.
Wow.
And that got page 19 of the broadsheet, The Age. And all of the front pages was all talking about the global financial crisis. And there was an author, which you'd probably know, George Monbiot, and he wrote that the financial crisis is petty compared to the nature crunch, and how we look at the financial markets and consumerism and stuff like that, and we pay so much attention to all of that, but we don't pay much attention to what's sustaining all of that, which is the environment that we live in. So I see my role as an artist is somebody to look at the reports and the statistics and the data that science is trying to alert us to and trying to inform us to. And I'm not saying that everyone doesn't understand, I'm just saying that they are dense documents, like the IPCC report is, 12,000 pages. They're dense documents and no one's got really time to read them. If I can work out a way to communicate that or look at that sort of data and put it into a visual form that makes people understand what's happening, like this, putting dense data of where our water is and what is sustaining us in a visual form, people can understand a visual form so much easier. Something like this work here is celebrating the 500 people that are doing something and actually patting them on the back and giving them a marker and something they can take home. And I think that's where it's interesting.
Certainly, and I think that it's such a struggle, even if you do grasp exactly what the facts and figures are saying, the next step to actually bring it into your life and your future and your story, I think is where the major divide is, because something like this is actually bringing all of this information personally into people's homes. And the stories of what their life is. And what about you, Jasmine? How has your practice come to engage with these ideas?
Well, for me, my environmental kind of awareness began when I was in school, and I was at a particular stage in my development when the world's largest ozone hole to date on record was observed, and that kind of shook my idea of existential awareness and being how can we have created a hole in the ozone that is more than double the size of Antarctica. To me, that just kind of blew my mind. And also because I had just gone, I think in my development, from thinking about, when I was younger, I used to think about there would be no part of the earth that a human would not have stood on. So you'll be driving through the landscape and you think, oh, humans have stood on every single part, and I've just gotten to that development stage where I've gone, wow, we're really tiny, and then, wow, we may be small as a species in terms of the planet, but we're having massive consequences in terms of our development. And what does that say about us? And how on earth can you manage that? And in terms of my art practice, I've always been really interested in the idea of art being able to communicate something that's quite sinister in a way that's quite inviting and engaging, because to be quite honest, Deb and I talk about this, some of the data and information that we look at scares the crap out of you. And you go, how on earth can I make sense of that, and how can I get up every morning if the planet is going to be stuffed? What do I do? What do I do? And that's interesting, because that's a theme that's come out of the festival. What's going to happen to civilization at the moment, which is another can of worms. But for me, I come from the perspective of, well, if I can make sense of it in a visual form, if I can make the invisible visible, then perhaps we've got a better shot at making sense of it. And also, you want to think about something that is beautiful or something that is aesthetically engaging. It invites you into beauty is something you invite into your mind. You want to think about it in the same way that something is humorous or a satire is engaging, and you want to remember it so you can talk to somebody else about it. Yeah, so that's kind of where I come from, and I find it a little bit more palatable to be able to process that information in that way, in a visual format, as opposed to someone telling me you're stuffed.
Yeah, that's no fun. Yeah. As far as communicating these ideas then in these ways, how would you sort of evaluate the experience of engaging with people who aren't already engaged with these ideas? Because I know that with the water, this water project, you were really interested in engaging the average Joe to
participate.
Think about these and to participate.
Yeah, someone that's not necessarily interested in art, but is interested in collecting water or is invited. There's some little connection that we have.
Permaculture, people that were into vegetable gardens. Most people that have got a veggie garden have got a water tank.
Yes.
Yeah, because they know that like we've just come out of an incredible drought, and we had water restrictions and stuff like that, and so all those sort of people that like their permaculture, their gardens and stuff, were all putting in water tanks. So they may have never engaged with an art project before, but you know, the idea of going, yeah, I've got 15,000 litres, here's my water, you know, stuff like that. And so engaging those sort of people. And
also giving them a sense of empowerment to say that, yes, do you realise that by doing that little bit, you're impacting all of this? Yeah. Which is just so fantastic. It's all those little things that make a really big difference. And in terms of ourselves and our self-identity and our self-ownership over the issues that we're facing, it was that moment of the first week you get one person, the next week you get their whole family. It's quite amazing how the bush telegraph works.
Yeah. And I think just that sensory experience to a beauty. I mean, the Ansel Adams photographs that are up in the Ian Potter at the moment, you know, people have been speaking quite a bit about the way that his photography had a lot to do with the actual conservation and the creation of national parks, as well as like someone like Rachel Carson's work, the Silent Spring. That, I mean, it's a concept that I think William Fox was talking about the other night, art that walks in the world, which was really interesting, I think. And in that sense, I was interested in this piece, whether there is future potential for this mapping project to feed back into science again, because it's sort of been through the filters back and forth.
Yeah.
I think in terms of like working with Melbourne Water and different catchments authorities and that kind of thing, we've identified that there is a gap, and the gap is there wasn't a map that we could find or that we believe existed that had all of these waterways all mapped in one. There just wasn't. And so the importance of understanding the entirety of a problem, it's not just about the macro. So we could find information about sections but not put them all together. And I don't know, I'm still making sense of that. As artists, we were the first ones to see the issue in its entirety and put them all together.
Yeah, there was nothing. You could find, like, you know, let's have a look at the west, let's have a look at the east, but there was nothing that had it all together.
Which is really so much a product, I suppose, of the way that our society is organised.
Yeah.
In, not only a capitalistic sense, but also
Segregated.
the way that we're governed.
Yeah. Like the Catchment Authority website, you could find information on the catchments and the rivers that fed into them, but you can find one that had them all connected or had a map with all of them on it.
Separate pages.
If it's over that border, we don't care.
Yeah, if it's in that country town, well, it's got nothing to do with us. So there was nothing that had it all.
And yet, in effect, all of this system is completely
connected. Yeah.
Okay, well, I just mentioned capitalism. Why don't we? I think that some questions that have been coming up, and in light of last night's budget, I feel like it's sort of impossible to not at least touch on. I'm interested in how you navigate economic ideas in the way that you work as artists. And there was an interesting question once again that came up at that William Fox. For people who weren't there, William Fox is the curator of a centre called the Art Plus Environment Centre at the Nevada Museum of Art, and they've got a really incredible collection of art that engages with science and climate, from the last 50, 60 years. And there was one particular piece that he showed us in the presentation, which was a massive metallic globe that will be launched into space as a satellite, as a work of art. Yeah. And someone put their hand up in the audience and said, I'm here because I really, I'm into this. This is, I'm not being critical, but how much is that going to cost? And at what point do you tip over in that balance, I suppose, of what it is worth putting that money into? So, how do you navigate that?
I thought Bill's response was really fantastic in terms of, well, it's probably going to cost about $1 million to do. Yeah. But at the same time, I walk past a $2 million painting, and it's a dot painting every single day. Yeah. And so, the thing that was great about Bill is that he's worked a lot with NASA in the past, and he has a lot of...
Got a discount?
Yeah.
You'd be hoping.
So I think he has a good understanding of what that project has the potential to be able to achieve, in that during the space race, that was when we first got a photo. I never realised, except from doing this body of research, that the first time we really had an image of the Earth in its entirety was actually because of the space race. And it's the same satellites that are in the atmosphere, that were put in the atmosphere then to research the Earth, that found the ozone hole 50 years later. So there's that sense of observing. And I think in terms of, in the 50s, the space race uniting everybody, and in terms of our entire planet, doesn't matter where you're from, in terms of our self-development and self-awareness, finding a way to unify us. I think that's what he's trying to do with that particular artwork, in terms of as a student that's an astronomer will be able to stand up at night and look up and be able to see the mirrored satellite, and that will reflect back a view of themselves on the Earth, and the Earth is a single entity. So I think that's where that artwork's probably gonna go. So I think that's quite valuable in terms of our self-awareness, or reawakening that self-awareness of ourselves as a single planet, or as a single organism, as a single species, what we can be doing. But do you want to?
No.
Okay, cool.
Unless you want to ask the question again, go for it.
Well, I'm interested in how you, your work obviously engages very heavily with the fact that, the capitalist way that we live, and consumerism is not only responsible for so much environmental dilemma, but actually makes it a situation where we don't want to look at the sort of unattractive fact of what we're doing.
Yeah, there's a heap of theory that the society, that Western society, is in a state of complete denial. Everything is about aesthetica. So everything's about the way you look, the car, the holidays, everything is about
the way that makes you feel.
Yeah, the visual. And so if we are in fact a society that is all consuming about the visual, then anything that affects visual and consumerism, making sure you purchase the right shoes, the right jumper, the right jeans, the right car, everything to fit in. If we are a society that's all about fitting in to consumeristic method, then we're not concerned in any shape or form about what we're doing to the planet. And so I'm very interested in how in Western societies we've used a heap of our natural resources, and so the development that's happening in third world countries, Indonesia, the Amazon rainforest, Papua New Guinea, with the mining and stuff like that, is now destroying countries that aren't us, that aren't Western societies, but we're using all their resources. So we can keep funding our lifestyles. And it's in classic little things like the new iPhone comes out, so everyone gets rid of their iPhone that was only released last year.
And little do they know how many rare earth minerals are in that iPhone.
Yeah, but I have to have the new iPhone.
And it goes in the bin instead of getting recycled. It's terrifying.
But even if it's recycled, it's still a freaking waste. You've got a mobile phone, and that built-in obsolescence of everything. And so therefore we believe we have this never-ending pool of resources that we can keep taking. I did a work that's on show at La Trobe, another show that we've got there, on the Amazon, and it looked at the deforestation that's happening there. And that work, you look at what they produced in the 1970s, and they were producing sugar, bananas and coffee. Bananas and coffee are crops that keep growing, and now they produce soybean, some astronomical tonnage of it, and that soybean gets produced and it wrecks the soil stuff for 2 years. They produce soybean, and that soybean gets shipped over to Europe to feed cattle so you can have a steak in Europe, and then the deforestation, and then they make grow cows and chooks and stuff, and they ship that all overseas. So that all the money that they're making in the Amazon, where they're cutting down the rainforest, is to fund businesses that are investing, that are European and American businesses. So they've stuffed theirs, so they're doing somebody else's. So a lot of our environmental problems are, I look at it and go, it is a lot to do with Western society constantly wanting to growth on growth. Like every year that business has to make more money, and that has a follow-on effect. And
if you can make an artwork that conveys that conversation in a single visual, well then we're a part of speeding up a conversation. And I think that's where we're kind of trying to go.
Yeah.
And so let's say that conversation is sped up, and let's say that art, such as the projects that you guys are doing, is able to affect ideological and implicit, the understanding that we have about our role in the ecosystem. What does that look like? What's the future to hold? Do you know what I'm saying? What are some ways that you can see that?
There was a fantastic artwork, and I'm so sorry I can't remember the name of it, from Bill's talk. Maybe you remember the name of the artist.
Okay.
And the thing that I found really fantastic about Bill Fox was the way that he was talking about the role that the artist has in society today in terms of being a part of creative and conscious thinking about the way that we're planning our environments and planning responses to the issues that we face. And so he gave an example of an artist that was employed by when they were building a waste Patricia, can't remember her name. So sorry, I can't remember her name. And in terms, the fantastic thing about it was in America, say you've got a natural environment that ticks some of the boxes in terms of land preservation but doesn't tick all of the boxes. If you've got an artist that has responded to the site in some specific way, then that's another way to be able to conserve that natural landscape. So the more artists that you have working from responding to the situation and working with it, it's another way of being able to preserve natural landscapes, raise awareness, raise consciousness, and then in turn help change the way that we're living. Yeah, does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I feel like maybe if anyone has a question, it could be a good time to ask, or just a comment even. Some input. That's okay. Oh, yeah.
We've come a bit late, but can you just talk about the potential map?
Yeah, it's the first time it's ever been mapped in Victoria, and it goes from Warrnambool to Lakes Entrance to Shepparton, and it maps the groundwater, so the bigger shapes in here is Victoria's groundwater, Yep. We've got our hot springs,
which are the islands.
little islands, and then you've got your rivers and your lakes, and then you've got the silver area, which is our catchments that feed Melbourne's water, your drinking water and stuff like that. So Jasmine and I spent a lot of time finding maps, and what we were saying at the start is that there was no map that had it all on there, so we had to get data from different sources. We drew that, and then those drawings then got fed into a computer program to make sort of like a map for the laser cutter to cut the different materials, and then that was put up on the wall.
When you say groundwater, do you mean underground?
Yeah, underground, yep.
Because that will be mapped.
Yeah, visualising Victoria's groundwater
is a fantastic online
website.
resource. Yeah.
Yep, then you can find it from there.
I was asking about the process, the concepts that you're working with. Very important, and part of what art does obviously is to help us look at things in a way which is different to our normal routines. But looking at this project, it also seems, as well as just providing a way of looking, that it's a lot of work, a huge amount. And 500, didn't expect to have so many samples.
Yeah.
So what did it entail? Was it an interesting process in itself?
A lot of hours. Many
It
hours.
feels like a project that could have taken a year, and we condensed it into 3 months.
3 months,
a 3 months residency, and the fact that there was 2 of us really helped.
We wouldn't have got this done if there wasn't 2 of us.
Sort of testimony to the importance of the issue.
Yeah.
That you're putting so much of your own and way beyond what you would have received from funding.
Yeah. We were a bit nervous, I have to be honest with you. Like, we, made the sheet and made the social media, and we sent it out, and it was just all quiet on the Western Front.
Until 3 weeks before the show, we only had 25 bottles.
Yeah, and we were getting really nervous. There was going to be 25 bottles on that table. And then all of a sudden it just sort of hit.
Over.
Yeah.
Sense
and so when we were filling these bottles, there were plastic, like people's recycled containers.
Oh, like those ones over there on the table behind you. They are water samples that have just come in.
And there were that bench top, all shelves, that all over the floor. The recycle bins, the big. We filled 2 of them with bottles. 2?
Yeah,
3.
recyclable bottles. 3. Yeah.
I was down that lift grabbing buckets, the bins, and bringing them back up, and we were having throwing contests by 10 o'clock at night, filling these bottles, and I was a really good shot by the end of it.
Yeah. And it was so funny because it was so important for us to have every single person's individual water that they had brought in their jar, because there was a sense that we got very early on in the project that it felt like someone had entrusted something to you that you had a duty of care over, to see that it was then delivered. And as you were pouring it, I don't know, it was like there was a sense of their DNA, their cells, they're in that water. And so we wanted to make sure that we did right by everybody that was helping us, that were helping us.
So, you got your water, you got to go find the bottle, because that got sandblasted. 1,000 degrees studio, so we had an Excel spreadsheet, all everyone's details in it. Then we had to get the map coordinates, and those map coordinates and the names got into another sheet that got put to the glass person. The bottles got dropped off, they got engraved. It was a real dum.
But it has been a project where we've been very grateful to have some fantastic supporters and help. Eleni and Matilda from the City of Melbourne, they brought up buckets of people from the City of Melbourne, because they have this, City of Melbourne have this fantastic building and integrated water system, so they could participate in the project. My partner Tom, who's an arts engineer, was absolutely amazing at helping us liaise everything, and he was helped us with translating our drawings into the computer program. So it has been us on the front, but we've had some fantastic support of some people backing us. So
one of the things that stands out for me is something that's kind of BBC, but you almost touched on it. Was the nature of the collaboration around this building. Because when you were talking about going across and using the engineering, you might want to talk about how that actually came about and how it could not have happened.
Yes, very much so. So working in this space has, as we briefly touched on, given us amazing resources of being able to talk to people that we would never normally be able to talk to over the coffee machine. So the way that this particular building is set up is that it's all open plan, and the idea is that different groups that are here will be able to very naturally collaborate with one another, and so and just by talking with one another, there are no walls here, and just by saying to someone, hey, we need a light box, and starting a conversation, well, what do you need that light box for? Do you know of one we could borrow? Do you know of one that we could source in some way? That starts a conversation. And then talking to somebody about the Oyster Project, and we were doing a radio interview one day with the team, with Charlie here from Carlton Connect. We got talking about the project and wanted to hear what are you artists actually up to in here? What are you up to? And so I told me, I was like, well, we can help. Have you thought about, you know, working with the University of Melbourne? Have you thought about, here, I'll give you this contact person, and we'll get going around these ideas, and working with like David Caroli, he was able to point us in the direction of a lot of the stuff, the data that we were able to work with. And that's all because we're here. And we're just here rocking up every day and having a conversation with someone, and that isn't something that would normally happen in another artist in residence, not that I've found so far.
No.
It's so fascinating because I feel like this map is actually really perfectly reflecting exactly that process that you guys have gone through, which is looking at a group of people who've got skills as a whole who can sort of work together and looking at the ways that their practices, you know, engage with each other. I thought.
Felicity, do you want to say something?
That's one of the interesting things about doing something outside your own discipline. And, you know, when you start to interrelate with other people, to say something outside of that, and then make it out, you know, and you get those connections. But one thing that was just crossing my mind was that sometime in the future, I would like to see a social demographic map, something similar to that, made from where the water came from, what parts of the town it came from, who the people were, to do a similar thing to that.
There is a map. We have got. It's coming. It's coming. Because
we're on the same wavelength.
That is coming. So we've got all these people's details. We've got their coordinates. We've got their. We don't have their names because we don't want to publish them online. But we have the reason that they've brought in their water. We have their coordinates, and we have.
How they use the
water, and then those details are going onto an online map with pins. But we're still like we're waiting. We're hoping we're working with someone at the City of Melbourne that they can put that into a map that we can put online.
And I should say another aspect of the project was also it was reduced rainfall, drought, and a little bit in there was also flood. And so through being here in the residency, it's probably a project that will come after we've finished artists in residence, but we're working with a guy, the Von Weiss family, whose bottle is here somewhere, and he's rather amazing, and he works with 3D mapping, and we're going to be making a work about flooding and the issues that are coming up for the City of Melbourne in terms of their floodplains and how that will be addressed or visualised or made sense of.
With the El Nino coming on, it could be drought as well.
But the online map with the people's details and stuff, that is coming, just not with their names. But it's because we went from 25 to 250 and then from 250 to 500. It was just like, whoa!
2 weeks before the show.
2 weeks before the show. So it was a sprint.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions?
Can we ask you a question? If anybody has anybody gone to see something that's a part of the festival, or has any thought that they were particularly inspired by, or have they had any thoughts or comments about the festival or issues that have been raised that they might want to talk about? Maybe.
How many people donated water? Woohoo! Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Okay.
All right. Well, that was a lovely discussion. I really enjoyed that.
Thanks.
I hope everyone did. And hang around.
Hang around. Feel free to ask any questions and have a chat afterwards.
I guess that's
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a massive thank you to Sophie for doing such a fantastic job this evening.
Yeah, you're pretty awesome.
Okay.